on, guys? It's Luke here for arguably our most important video of the week, our DFS strategy show. This is going to be a combination of our value picks video and our fades and sleepers, essentially everything you guys need to know when it comes to lineup construction. Our value picks, obviously some guys you guys can use to go ahead and save some salary and spend up for an extra stud or two. And of course our fades and sleepers, some of the players being a little bit over-owned in my opinion, and some of the guys being a little bit overlooked by the industry that you guys can dish out as quote-unquote some diamonds in the rough. But without any delay at all, let's hop into it. First off with our value picks here for week 17. Our first value pick this week is going to be Tyler Higbee of the Los Angeles Rams. He has a great matchup against this Baltimore Ravens team, who is not only dealing with a ton of injuries, but ranks as the second worst passing defense in all of the NFL. The thing that's great about Higbee is also his price tag at just $4,000. He gives you a ton of flexibility with the rest of your lineup. So whether you're dishing him out in a Matthew Stafford stack, or of course on his own as a little bit of flexibility, I love him in both circumstances. As of right now, I have him at a 13.3 point projection. He's also coming in with single digit ownership, making him less chalky than some of these other picks. Next up at number 5, we have Cole Beasley, who is going to be a lot more chalky than somebody like a Tyler Higbee, but a great matchup against this Atlanta Falcons team. Also a great price tag at just $4,900. Josh Allen is deservingly going to be chalk this week, so using somebody like a Cole Beasley or Stephon Diggs is going to be extremely popular this week. We have Emmanuel Sanders, who has not practiced to this point of the week, so they are going to be without him, who is right around a 22% target share, so that is significant. So Cole Beasley going to see plenty of those targets over the middle, and if there's going to be a major beneficiary from that extra usage, I expect that to be Beasley, not Stephon Diggs. First and foremost, Diggs already has a massive target share, so it'd be hard for him to take even more onto his own plate. He also lines up on the outside, whereas Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley, they run that slot wide receiver role a lot more efficiently than they do on the outside, so I expect some of those targets to go Cole Beasley's way. At a 15-point projection, he not only gives you a very solid floor on this slate, but could very well crack the end zone and end up getting you a 20-plus fantasy point performance. At number 4, we have Sony Michel, who also made my core picks video at $5,800. I'm a little bit more excited about that Los Angeles Rams passing attack, as evidenced by Tyler Higbee. Matthew Stafford is also one of my favorite quarterbacks to stack this week, but perhaps Sony Michel ends up taking apart that Ravens defense. We know they're going to move the ball at will. They have a great passing attack against, again, the second worst defense in the NFL against the pass, but Sony Michel, if he scores a rushing touchdown or two, could very well end up in the optimal lineup. The beauty here is he's also a little bit lower owned than some of the other value plays on this slate. A lot of that comes down to, again, the emphasis on that passing attack there. So at a 17.3 point projection, he not only gives you the kind of floor that you're looking for, again, if he ends up getting in the end zone a little bit more than we expect, could go out and break the slate. At number 3, another core pick making his name here on this value picks list is going to be Boston Scott of the Philadelphia Eagles. He could very well be the lead back for them this week, but Jordan Howard yet again limited in practice. So still questionable on the injury report there. We already have Miles Sanders who's been rolled out, and Jalen Hurts still dealing with that ankle injury. So the only healthy rusher they have on this squad is going to be Boston Scott. And this is the team that runs it more than anyone else in the NFL. They just passed the 49ers for both rushing attempts and rushing yards, asserting themselves as easily the best rushing offense in the NFL. And this matchup against the Washington football team, just like the Ravens defense, horrible against the pass, which actually makes these running backs a little bit sneaky. If they're moving the ball, able to get the ball into the red zone, that is going to lead to even more red zone usage for a Boston Scott. So really like him here at a 16.5 point projection, and he gives you a ton of flexibility at the position at just $4,900. At number 2, though, somebody who's going to be extremely chalky this week, especially since Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be out, that is Trey Lance of the 49ers. He's just $4,800 and projects for nearly 20 fantasy points at the quarterback position. Not only is he somebody, he's going to bring rushing and passing upside to the table. This matchup against the Texans is great. I mean, even though they are one of the better front sevens in the NFL, their secondary has a lot to be asked for. They're huge favorites against this Texans team, and if they're going to move the ball, if they're going to put up plenty of yardage, Trey Lance is going to have a huge day. And truthfully, he really only has to go out there and get you 18 to 19 fantasy points to end up being an optimal play. And he has a true 25 to 30 point ceiling if he goes out and has a massive day. So really like him there against the Texans. Definitely going to garner quite a bit of ownership, but I will be well over the field in most of my contests. But at number one, the best value play of the slate, that is reserved for Darrell Williams of the Kansas City Chiefs. At $5,800, he's the same price as Sony Michel, but comes with much higher upside. This Bengals-Chiefs game is going to be an absolute banger. I'm expecting over 55 points scored here. Vegas has it around a 53.5 point over-under. I expect it to be a little bit higher scoring than that. And Darrell Williams should be starting with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Doubtful at this point. Darrell Williams has been extremely effective in Edwards-Helaire's absence in the past. He's been a great PPR player. He's gotten some of those just acrobatic touchdowns in primetime. He's also been a very efficient runner, getting your touchdown upside in the red zone, but also at over a 4 yards per carry clip. So can really do it all for you. And anytime you have a running back that's relatively cheap and one of the highest over-unders of the entire weekend, you're going to want to be over him in terms of his exposure. So Darrell Williams, very safe in terms of a cash play, but also for GPPs because he does give you that 20-plus point upside. And now for our fades and sleepers. And first and foremost, these fades, of course, guys, I think a little bit over-owned, maybe getting a little bit too much hype this week. Our first fade, Michael Carter of the New York Jets. And anytime a Jets player is getting over 14% ownership, in this case 14.2%, it's going to raise some eyebrows because especially when they're playing a team like the Buccaneers that has a great front seven, they're huge favorites. I don't understand why the public is so high on the losing team's running back. To me, it's relatively straightforward. Sure, he has a great price tag there. I was all over Michael Carter a few weeks ago when he first came back from injury. Didn't end up having a massive day, ended up hitting value. But against this amazing front seven of the Buccaneers, I do not expect him to have very much production. So it's a relatively straightforward fade for me. Again, anytime you have a team that is not the favorite, the underdog, they're facing a good run defense, that is a recipe for disaster. Next up, we have Josh Jacobs of the Las Vegas Raiders at $6,200. I like this game in general. I do expect it to be a relatively high-scoring game, but I do expect the Colts to win in a relatively handled fashion. So that's why I'm targeting somebody like Derek Carr. He ended up making my core picks earlier this week. If they're going to be playing from behind, he's going to have to absolutely air it out. You could see him throw the ball 40, maybe 50 times in this game. And if that's the case, Josh Jacobs is not going to have any chance to hit value. So at over 15% ownership, again, a relatively straightforward fade. If the Raiders had been the favorites in this affair, I'd have a completely different take on Josh Jacobs. He'd be looking at least 15 to 20 touches, and at that kind of price tag at $6,200, would definitely be able to pay it off. But in this type of game script, just doesn't have the kind of potential that I'm looking for. And at number one, Stephon Diggs. I mentioned him before as an extremely chalky option for this Bills team. It's not like he doesn't project well. I haven't projected for nearly 20 fantasy points. It's really the price tag and the ownership that sours it for me. First and foremost, the price tag. There's other guys in that range I like a whole lot more. First and foremost, if you want to spend the whole way up for a Cooper Kupp, I definitely like his projection there at nearly 28 fantasy points. And if you're taking a look at some of the guys in that comparable range, a Tyreek Hill at $8,300, they project for nearly 3 or even 4 more fantasy points. So even though the matchup against the Falcons is good on paper, I don't have it quite as good as what the public is giving them credit for. So at 21.6% expected ownership, going to be a fade for me here on the slate. And now for our sleepers. First off, we have Marquise Brown of the Baltimore Ravens. And even though we don't know who's going to be throwing him the ball, I still like him whether it's Tyler Huntley or Lamar Jackson. To this point, Lamar Jackson looked like he was going to play on Wednesday, practiced, and even though it was in a limited fashion, was out there moving around pretty well. Unfortunately, though, did not practice on Thursday, and as of right now on Friday, I believe he's a limited participant. So I have no idea, again, who's going to start, but Tyler Huntley showed that he's more than capable as a backup. So Marquise Brown, somebody who's definitely a hit or miss type of option, but that's what we're looking for in large field tournaments. This matchup against the Rams, again, isn't great on paper, but don't let that fool you. You guys remember when Jonathan Taylor went out there and scored 56 fantasy points? Yeah, that was against a Tampa Bay defense that is top 5 against the run. So it can happen from time to time. When you have a player of his skill, of his type of caliber. And I'm not saying that Marquise Brown is an MVP type of player like a Jonathan Taylor. He's still a Pro Bowl level wide receiver. You can go ahead and overcome a tough matchup. And it's not like Jalen Ramsey is going to be shadowing Marquise Brown across the field. I don't expect that to happen. Jalen Ramsey has hardly shadowed anyone this year. They've really kind of let him sit over there on the right side. Marquise Brown's not going to have to hide. So really like him here, particularly at less than 4% ownership. As of right now, I have him at 3.8%. And somebody who, if he goes out there, gets us one of those patented long touchdowns, could go out and break the slate. At number 2, we have Joe Mixon, who was a core play for me earlier on this week, and I expected him to be much higher owned. Again, this Chiefs-Bengals game going to be an absolute shootout, so even at $7,500, which is sure a little bit steep for Joe Mixon, I am willing to eat that, as particularly if he's going to be less than 5% owned. As of right now, projected for just 4.9% rostership, and for me, going to be an absolute slam dunk of a play. Last week, scored over 30 fantasy points, and that was without a ton of rushes. He got a lot of PPR production, ended up scoring a touchdown both on the ground and through the air. This time around against the Chiefs defense, they're going to go to more of a rush-heavy approach. This Chiefs defense, if they have anything to write home about, it is that secondary. Ward, an absolute stud. Sorensen, just Matthew. Studs all over the place, Pro Bowl level players. Their front seven, though, gets eaten alive by the running game. So I do expect them to try and use the analytics. The Bengals, a young coaching staff, love using the numbers. I expect them to go out, run the ball a lot more than we've seen over the last few weeks. Also, particularly because Joe Mixon's healthier. He was dealing with an injury last week, still ended up going off, has no injury designation for this week, and all signs are that he's going to have a huge game once again against this Kansas City defense. But at number 1, our favorite sleeper pick for this week, going to be Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints, who for sure had a down week last week, but that's also why we're getting him at single-digit ownership, which is not something we can typically say about Alvin Kamara. Everyone knows about the type of ceiling that he brings to the table, and now that we're not dealing with the Ian Book experiment, we're going to have Taysom Hill as the quarterback. I expect that to be a huge benefit to somebody like Alvin Kamara. This Panthers defense is probably why people are a little bit skeptical to go back to Kamara, even with Hill back in the lineup. But the truth is, this Panthers defense, their strength is in the secondary. Stephon Gilmore, some great safeties out there, some young talent, and in their front seven, much like a Chiefs team, a little bit susceptible, right? So a team like Alvin Kamara a team like the Saints with Alvin Kamara know how to take them apart. Sean Payne, even though he's a little bit of an old hat, still uses the analytical approach, and we've seen a ton of rushes from Alvin Kamara between the tackles this year. You've probably heard about it in every primetime game. He's getting more rushes this year than he has in his entire career, and I expect that to continue against this defense. So at $7,900, at just 8.4% expected ownership, going to be one of my favorite plays of the entire slate, particularly for some low-owned leverage. That is all we've got here for our DFS strategy show. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments, first of all, who your favorite value pick for this week is, and of course, who your biggest fade and sleeper is. For me, favorite value pick, going to be Darrell Williams by a long shot. Trey Lance, potentially, if you're looking for a value pick at quarterback, but I'm a little bit more prone to pay up at quarterback, take my value picks elsewhere, but go ahead and let me know who you guys got. And of course, my biggest fade and sleeper, you guys just heard those. So let me know down in the comments who you guys have. Thank you guys for stopping by and enjoying the content. If you guys haven't already liked the video or subscribed, make sure you guys go ahead and do so. We're going to have even more content coming throughout the week. Of course, our Sunday live stream, that'll be at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time as per usual. And of course, all of our showdown slates and main slate stuff for next week. So stay tuned for all of that. And until next time, guys, good luck with all of your lineups here for the weekend, and let's get this cash.